Are familiar with the thought experiment, the ship of Theseus?
Naturally, the ship of Theseus is an exhibit in a museum. Over time, the planks drop and are replaced with no original planks remain. Is it still the ship of Theseus? This show was phenomenal, and it benefited from a lot of things. It benefited just from being great. It benefited from the way it was released. We are so used to the Netflix model of just an entire season being released. So when we were told we were going to have to wait a week for each new episode of WandaVision, that was a shock to the system for us. We forget how not used to that we are now. And yet this show benefited from that. It made us think about it. It kept the discussion in the sort of public zeitgeist for that week, and therefore this show had longevity and excitement building in a way that I would argue Stranger Things just doesn't after a couple of weeks. It also benefited from being the first of the Disney Plus shows, so we had no idea what to expect, and it ended up being phenomenal. It ended up being fantastic. Not to say I don't have my criticisms, but the very mystery of this show, the sense of unease it gives you, is so effective from the first episode to the last that I was so on the edge of my seat, and I got so excited at each reveal and each little nugget and clue. It really did feel like a proper mystery show, as well as paying very charming homage to all the sitcoms of different eras. And that was fun, but underlying it was still the human brain trying to piece everything together. However, my major criticism is I don't think this show quite stuck the landing in the same way that, say, Hawkeye did. When the mystery gets dropped and it becomes more typical MCU fare and not in a particularly engaging way, like the witch battle isn't brilliant. The most intriguing scene in the finale is the one I just quoted, the ship of Theseus scene between the two visions. The introduction of White Vision is exciting. Getting to see Wanda's kids come into their powers, and then the devastating ending where she loses everything, leading into Multiverse of Madness, that broke my heart. You completely get where she's coming from after having gone through so much. It was also really nice to see Darcy again. I've always loved that character, and I'm glad that she came back for this. Jimmy Woo's fantastic as well. I like that team up. Getting to see Monica Rambeau, I actually enjoyed her both as the sitcom version of her character and as the actual Monica Rambeau. The villain wasn't fantastic, I'll be honest, and it feels a bit lazy in the way they wrap him up. I mean, they don't even give Darcy a proper send-off in the show. She gets to like crash into the villain, and then she doesn't actually get to like a proper finale. I can't really bring myself to get excited about the Skrulls yet, and therefore that reveal in the finale wasn't brilliant. And final minor criticism, the boner joke, come on. Like, that was such an exciting reveal, and now with the hindsight of Multiverse of Madness, having Xavier in it, it really doesn't seem that far-fetched to have that version of Quicksilver in the MCU, and yet they had to make it a joke. It's a shame. But that being said, this show suffers from one more thing, but it's not the show's fault. This is not a criticism of the show, it's just the nature of the speculation on the internet, and that is we all got ourselves hyped up for Mephisto, or the X-Men, or a multitude of other things, House of M, whatever we got ourselves hyped up for. No show could have done that in a satisfactory way. And everyone's so excited for Mephisto. Are people forgetting that he's part of the worst storyline ever in Marvel? Or at least one of the worst storylines? One More Day? Why does anyone want him back? Why does anyone want him in the MCU? Leave that far away in the past, please. The one piece of speculation that did pay off, though, was Agatha. And honestly, I enjoyed her more as Agnes. That being said, she totally hams up. She's totally having a great time as the villain. But as I say, this show excels the most when it's the mystery. For the first chunk of episodes, when the real mystery, and like the actual performances of Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, they're fantastic. Do I think this show benefited from being the first of its kind? Yes. Do I think it's as good on the rewatch as, say, like Hawkeye? Probably not. I'm going off the emotions I felt while watching it. This is definitely the #1 Disney Plus show for me so far. The way it made me feel, the way it got me excited, the way it had me on the edge of my seat, the way I was laughing and, and trying to piece everything together, and I was just completely along for the ride, even through the slightly lackluster finale. I'm not saying the finale was particularly bad, it was just more typical of what you expect from an MCU show. What I loved about this show is it wasn't anything of what I expected, minus sort of riffing on the whole sitcom thing. I had no idea what that was going to be like, because I knew it was somewhat taking inspiration from a Vision comic, but obviously because it had Wanda in it, it was going to be different, and yeah, it just completely surprised me. I didn't have any anticipation for this show. Again, a lot of the Disney Plus shows that came out before Hawkeye, I was just watching sort of out of obligation, waiting for Hawkeye to come out, and yet this one completely took me by surprise, and I absolutely adored it. And that's why it got to #8.